Good evening and welcome everyone. We're delighted to have you here. To our students sharing their research during the poster session of this event, we thank you for your innovative ideas and hard work. It's obvious a lot of time went into these presentations. I know that Dr. Travis Malone, the Ann B. Schumedine Dean of the Baton Honors College, and his committee of guest judges had a very hard time picking the three finalists. I'd like to introduce senior staff and some special guests who are here with us tonight. First, John Grew, Vice President for Finance. Keith Moore, Senior Vice President. Kelly Cordova, Chief of Staff and Vice President for Strategic Initiatives. Heather Campbell, Vice President for Enrollment and Student Success. And Lauren Loving Marquez, Associate Vice President for Academic Affairs. Also joining us tonight is our board chair, John Pruden. Over here. Board vice chair, Nancy DeFord. And most importantly, we have the individuals who made this all possible, Louis Ryan and Jane Batten. More about them later. For now, I'd like to invite Dr. Craig Wansink, Batten Professor of Religious Studies and the Joan P. and Macon F. Brock Jr., Director of the Robert Nussbaum Center, to give tonight's blessing.
Let us pray. Eternal God, we thank you for this beautiful and fragile planet, for oceans that breathe, trees that speak, and beauty that takes our breath away. We're grateful for those who plant, protect, and persevere, for small acts of care, and for bold visions for change. Thank you for the Ryans, for Jane Batten, and for students who dare to reimagine the world. Help us live with reverence, not entitlement, honoring the earth and each other, and kindle in us a steady fire to act with love, to live with purpose, and to protect, to lovingly protect what remains. In your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you. Please enjoy dinner. I hope everyone is enjoying their meal. We have a wonderful program ahead, but before we continue, I'd like to take a moment to share more about the Baton Honors College and what makes it so special. This initiative was born from the vision and generosity of Jane P. Batten, a remarkable woman whose deep belief in education, service, and environmental stewardship has shaped not only our university, but the lives of countless students. Jane didn't just imagine an honors college that would attract high-achieving students. She envisioned one that would inspire those students to become thoughtful leaders and ethical change makers. Her dream was to nurture global citizens who are committed to solving complex challenges and making the world better for future generations. We are so proud to say that the Baton Honors College continues to live up to that vision and in many ways surpass it. As you saw during the poster session earlier, our Batten scholars are curious, they're driven, and they're purpose-filled. They're not only asking big questions, they're working toward real solutions. Because of this, we're especially grateful to Louis and Prudence Ryan for recognizing the promise of these students and creating the Louis and Prudence Ryan Environmental Research Symposium and Prize. This initiative gives our scholars the chance to take their research further, share it publicly, and compete for meaningful recognition in an area that speaks to their values and to ours. Louis has been a dedicated member of the VWU Board of Trustees since 2007, and he and Prue have long championed their two great passions, education and the environment. The Baton Honors College represents the perfect intersection of those causes, and thanks to their generous endowment, our students now have an even greater platform to pursue excellence for the greater good. When this group of students first earned their spot in the Baton Honors College, I told them that their time here would prepare them to lead, to think globally, act ethically, and help shape a more just and sustainable future. Tonight's presentation of the Ryan Environmental Research Symposium and Prize is the realization of a shared vision, Jane's, the Ryans, and ours. We are incredibly thankful for their belief in our students and their enduring commitment to making this world a better place. While Louis is here with us tonight, when we asked him if he wanted to speak or just let the video do the talking, the lawyer in him didn't miss a beat. Why mess with a good thing, he said. So consider this well-vetted, boardroom-ready opening statement, polished, strategic, and pre-approved. So please, sit back and enjoy.
Good evening. My name is Louis Ryan, and I am pleased to add my welcome to all of you at this Environmental Research Symposium, dinner, and ultimately Environmental Research Prize. I've been asked to speak to you tonight because my wife and I were involved in the creation of the symposium and dinner and prize. And I've been asked to explain why it is that we thought that was a good thing for us to do. First of all, a very simple answer would be that I've been on the Board of Trustees at Virginia Wesleyan for a goodly number of years, and therefore I have a loyalty to the school. I didn't go here as a student, but as a member of the Board of Trustees, I get to see the school, I get to see its development, and I develop an enthusiasm for it. The second reason is because Scott Miller and David Black asked me to, and I don't know how many of you know them very well, but I've never found the energy to say no to those guys. So that would be the second simple reason for my being involved with this. But the more substantive reason for each of those has to do with my wife and I's commitment to two causes above all others. And those two causes are education and the environment. And obviously, this symposium is the intersection of those two interests. So let me just take a second to explain why I'm interested in those two things. Education is probably pretty obvious why that's of interest to me, because I'm speaking to an audience of people who are either involved in education as educators or students or parents of students or otherwise interested in this university. So I don't need to go too deeply. But I'm going to take this opportunity to go a little deeper than that and explain what I view as the primary benefit of education, both to individuals and to our society at large. And that is that a good education may teach you facts, it may teach you skills, and all of those can be important. But what a good education does, one hopes, is to teach you how to think. And what I mean by thinking is learning to think critically, creatively, and holistically. And doing that is really necessary to guarantee the survival and thriving of humanity. And the environment is the perfect place to both learn those skills and to practice them once you've learned them. The complexity of the environment, the interrelationship of very many aspects of the environment, requires anyone who's interested in preserving our environment so that we can survive and thrive, must look at many aspects, because you solve a problem one place and it creates an issue somewhere else. So you need to have a full understanding of every aspect of how an environment works and how, if you attempt to improve it, you need to be mindful of the various ways that it might work and how your efforts to improve one thing may cause a problem somewhere else. For instance, wind power is a wonderful way to avoid the use of fossil fuels. But when you put wind farms in a flyway for bird species, you may end up killing a lot of rare birds. So you need to think about that. You need to understand that kind of issue and see if there's a way to have it both ways. Another example is electric cars. A good idea? Yes, certainly. But research has shown that the creation of electric cars creates a bigger carbon footprint than the creation of gasoline-powered cars. Now, the minute the cars start driving, the electric car starts regaining that benefit, but it may take 40, 60,000 or more miles before that benefit is regained, and it can be even worse if the electricity is generated through coal power. So these are just a couple of examples of how complex the environment is, how interrelated various parts of the environment are, and why it's essential that people who have an interest in the environment think critically, creatively, and holistically. So this symposium creates a natural opportunity for students and faculty, for that matter, to engage in this kind of thinking and to hopefully do meaningful research work that will add to our knowledge of the issues that we face with our environment and how we should go about dealing with those issues. So we are very pleased to be involved with this, to have our name associated with it, and we're thrilled to have Virginia Wesleyan University here in the greater Hampton Roads area, bringing fabulous students to work in many areas, but particularly in the environment. Thank you for your time. I appreciate the opportunity to make these remarks, but I'm sorry I can't be at the dinner myself. Thank you.
I'm Dr. Travis Malone, Anby Shumadine, Dean of the Batten Honors College, and it is my honor to also welcome you here this evening. As Dean, I have had the opportunity not only to share this journey with our students, but I want to thank them for all the research that you see in this room, but also for all the things they're doing around campus. And this capstone event does kind of give us a chance to talk about and see your work over a larger span, 4 years from recruitment to this moment here. And I want to thank you all for allowing us to be a part of that journey and being so inspired by your work throughout the time you've been here, not only just what happened here. I want to thank Louis Prue for your establishing this symposium and providing a public venue where we can showcase this research and the innovative approaches to addressing the global challenges we are facing. Now, the students in the Honors 480 class, it's the senior research capstone class for the Honors College. This is the capstone. This is what they've worked their entire honors career for and working up to this moment. They develop a research project, paper, and a poster that is set to address one of the goals of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Goal is to solve it, prove how you can solve it, and prove how it might scale as it goes through. The United Nations SDGs, as they're famously called, have served as a guide for VW's own environmental guiding principles. The simple elegance of the SDGs are the ways that the goal addresses human problems on a global and local scale and to provide hope for a more sustainable and healthy future. Those 17 goals span the greatest problems our human race faces on this fragile planet. In Emergent Strategy, Adrienne Marie Brown writes, at a human scale, in order to create a world for more people, for more life, we have to collaborate on the process of dreaming, envisioning, and implementing that world. We have to recognize that a multitude of realities have, do, and will exist. The posters and research projects represented here are attempts to dream, visualize, and actualize real solutions to those global goals. The more than 30 research papers and posters developed by both fall and spring sections of the Honors 480 Senior Seminar course. I want to recognize the professors that have shepherded these projects throughout this year. Dr. Annika Quick, Professor of Earth and Environmental Sciences. Dr. Lisa Lyon-Payne, Batten Professor of Communication. Professor Gavin Pate, Batten Professor of English. And Professor James Moskowitz, Batten Lecturer of Political Science. So they shepherded these projects from their genesis to their completion to what you see here. And once the papers were completed, a campus panel using blind review process adjudicated the papers to recognize tonight's 3 finalists. Along with that panel, I'd like to recognize 2 students who also served as that blind peer review process. One of them is here tonight, Alan Surovic. And Isabella Grossweiler, who couldn't attend here because she's currently rehearsing for the Marlin Gems dance showcase on Saturday. So please be back here in Town Bank Arena for that on Saturday afternoon. But they also served as readers of the junior class, giving a sense of perspective and inspiration, serving as inspiring points that they might take to the next year's sections of the honors class. The 3 finalists then were recorded, and their presentations of the research and the video, the research posters, and the papers were sent to 3 community judges. And I'd like to take a moment to thank them for the time to adjudicate and award the prize this evening. Teresa Augustin, Vice President of Education at Norfolk Botanical Gardens. Chris Moore, Virginia Executive Director of the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. And Lacey Shirey, Executive Director of the Elizabeth River Project. I can tell you that their deliberations were thoughtful and very purposeful in the thinking through that process. The projects were then judged on 4 criteria. 1, potential impact of the project. 2, the ability of the presenter to address the complexities of the environmental problem in front of them as they solve this SDG goal. The strength of their evidence and project, and then finally how they communicated that in their work. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to the 3 projects that were selected as our finalists for this evening. Our first finalist this evening is Brianne Bassett. Brianne is a junior from Salt Lake City, Utah. She's double majoring in Hispanic Studies and Political Science with a pre-law track and working on a certificate of International Organizations and Diplomacy. Brianne spent her semester studying away in Spain, and Brianne is a campus ambassador for the Office of Enrollment. Bree, as we normally call her, has presented at regional and national conferences, including the Southeast Regional Honors Council Annual Conference in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and other conferences. Bree is serving in leadership on the new Campus Pre-Law Society, attended Model UN, is being a member of the Political Science Honor Society, and a VW Global Citizen. She's been on the president's list for 5 consecutive semesters. And in the next year, because Bree is only a junior, Bree will be applying to law school next fall and then pursuing a legal career with a focus on international law. Right now, I'd like to welcome Brianne Bassett, one of our finalists for the Ryan Prize.
All right. Hi, good evening. As you may have heard, my name is Brianne Bassett, and this is my presentation on empowering women through comprehensive sexual health. Imagine a university orientation, much like the ones we have here. It's filled with students who are very excited to begin new college experiences. In this orientation, a faculty member briefly mentions Title IX, where you can find condoms in various offices around campus, and maybe even STI testing at the student health clinic. Perhaps a young woman in this crowd came from an abstinence-only high school and had gotten very little sex ed at home. Now in college, people are talking about condoms and STI testing, and she feels lost and wants to understand, but she doesn't want to stand out by asking. Maybe another young woman in the crowd had a very good understanding of sexual health, but she's always struggled financially and doesn't want to feel exposed by asking what services are offered and how much they cost, and so she also stays quiet. Perhaps a third young woman is interested in learning more about the university sexual health programming, but is discouraged by the fact that the school generally displays straight couples and provides only external condoms. This doesn't apply to her and her partner and makes her feel excluded, and she doesn't want to be known for making a scene about it. Every person comes to college with a different background and experiences, but often university sexual health takes a one-size-fits-all approach and offers gender-neutral information that is very limited. This kind of education, while offering some help, leads students to feel isolated in their experiences, unsure about their sexual health, and embarrassed to seek answers. Sexual health education needs a change. It needs to provide specific, accessible, holistic information to college-aged women. And in collaboration with the Counseling Center, I created a solution for sexual health programming that would be comprehensive, inclusive, and sustainable for university campuses. But why does university sexual health matter in the first place? Well, university programs can provide a very strong foundation for sexual health. It has the potential to be answers for so many questions and to bridge the gap between so many different high school sex ed experiences. It can also be a source for positive change by setting standards for consent and encouraging healthy habits. Unfortunately, university programming is very, very variant, with different schools facing different obstacles to providing better information. And so, traditional university sex education does not always meet the potential for the benefits that it could provide. Now, one of the most crucial improvements that could be made to university sex ed is to build more holistic curriculums. University programming tends to focus on STI transmission and condom usage, and while these things are important, it disregards crucial aspects of sexual health, especially when it comes to female sexual health topics. As I was conducting my research, including many personal interviews, it became very apparent that education on even the most basic of topics such as anatomy, menstruation, and preventative care are both needed and can be potentially life-saving. Providing information beyond a condom and an STI pamphlet has the very real possibility of changing lives and, by extension, larger communities. So, why is it important to implement these changes now? Well, several recent political developments have made this a crucial time to implement better female-oriented sex ed. In 2022, decisions about abortions were given to the states after Roe v. Wade was overturned. This means that to maintain semblances of choice, a woman would have to be very aware of the current legislation in her state, and this decision increased hostility towards women's sexual health in general, making it less about personal empowerment and more about societal regulation. In February 2025, the Trump administration ordered the retraction of several terms from the CDC research. These terms include things like pregnant person, biologically male, female, etc. This has already resulted in the loss of essential health information, such as HIV prevention pages, which have been taken down. The CDC is a go-to source for many Americans for health information, and the information that you may be seeking may now be removed. Finally, several executive orders and appointments from the Trump administration have pursued drastic changes in both health and education departments. This has the potential to greatly influence high school sex ed, and thus the need for universities to take action is even greater. Each of these changes has politicized the topic of women's sexual health, making it increasingly controversial and even dangerous to seek this kind of information. Trustworthy and anonymous sources to turn to are more important than they've ever been before. So, my solution in traditional university sexual education starts at VWU. I've created a comprehensive female-oriented sexual health website, and I worked with Michelle DeRosa, VWU's student health coordinator. She helped me get this website approved and posted to VWU's counseling resources page, and to post flyers in health offices around the campus. I'll now actually get to show you a bit of this website that I created. So, as you can see here on the homepage, the website has several different topics. They range in 4 categories, which are sexual health, reproductive health, consent in Title IX, and gynecological health as well. One of the features that I'm most proud of on this website includes these interactive presentations, which allows the user to get more information just by simply clicking on the different aspects of it. There are 4 interactive presentations throughout this website. This one is on female anatomy, there's another on specific STI information, another on pregnancy development, and a last on the menstrual cycle. I'll continue to scroll through and give you a little bit of a look at it, but as we can see at the bottom of each page is this sources for more information bubble. This includes hyperlinks to sources that were used for this page. This is both to provide information, further information that people can look at for these topics, but to also let them know where this information has come from. On this page here, which is our STI STD page, there's also a really interesting bubble, which is this resources bubble here. When clicked, this bubble takes you all the way to the resources page, which shows you where you can get STI testing done, including the prices. Now, I wanted to make sure that this website was relevant to the VW campus, and so for things like Title IX, all of the information is VW specific, so that students have easy access to it right there on the website. Finally, I wanted to make sure that when presenting things such as contraceptives, as well as menstrual products, that people knew that there were several options. That way, sexual health is no longer one size fits all, and everybody can get exactly what they need. One of the things that I'm most proud of on this website are these Mythbuster graphics that I have put throughout the website. This is both to tackle common misconceptions about sexual health care and to give corrected information. Finally, and possibly most importantly, we have the resources page. Sorry, there's quite a lot. The resources page includes both on and off-campus resources, including hotlines that students can call. It is so essential that sexual health care feels trustworthy and safe, and so I've marked several of them as specifically LGBTQ+ friendly. So, creating this website was much more difficult than I had originally anticipated. It took many extensive hours and a lot of research, which demonstrated to me just how valuable a resource like this could be. But what makes it different from any other program or Google search? Well, it has campus-specific information that's been approved by the university. It takes information from over 90+ sources into one easy-to-read source. It covers a wide range of topics, and it's very easily navigable. Most importantly, it's anonymous. It's a resource that you don't have to share what information you're looking for, and you have 24/7 access to it, which is something that you just don't get with in-person programming. Finally, it's easily shareable and very low maintenance for the school to maintain. So why sexual health? There are several global implications to sexual health. Of course, having it being recognized in Goal 3, Good Health and Well-Being of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Better female sexual health makes progress towards gender equality, improves relationships in communities by instilling principles of respect and courtesy, empowers personal decisions and advocacy for self and others, and decreases stigma and politicization of health topics. Investing in women's and girls' reproductive rights and agency is proven to have remarkable returns, including in terms of social well-being, economic prosperity, and peace, which our world so desperately needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Bree. Our second finalist this evening is Jalen Major. Jalen was born and raised in Virginia Beach, Virginia, and in May, Jalen will be graduating with a Bachelor of Sciences degree in biology with a minor in chemistry. I got to know Jalen quite a bit on our study away course to Tokyo, Japan, including a almost mile-long run through the Denver airport to get to our plane. Last month, I had the honor of hearing Jalen present this evening's research at the Virginia's Collegiate Honors Council Annual Conference at Virginia State University. He's also presented the research at the Southeast Regional Honors Conference in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Jalen is the president of Tri Beta, the Biology Honor Society, vice president for Sigma Zeta, Math and Science Honor Society, and a VW Sustainable Leader. After graduation, Jalen is headed to a post-baccalaureate research program at the University of Houston. This time I'd like to welcome Jalen Major to the podium.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for the introduction. My name is Jalen Major. I did my capstone project essentially trying to optimize our food waste management using bacterial composting. So to get into why I wanted to do this project, food waste, as we all know, is an ever-increasing global issue. 17% of all the food produced in the world is disposed of as waste. In the United States, 60% of that waste ends up in landfills. So there are a few pretty deep-rooted societal behaviors that exacerbate these practices, primarily production being prioritized over storage, distribution, and management of food, as well as middle and high-income households often buying food in excess. And like I said, this leads to a lot of food waste being sequestered in landfills, and that food, when it breaks down, cannot re-enter the ecosystem and provide nutrients for further growth. Instead, it degrades and releases pollutants like greenhouse gases, exacerbating other environmental issues. So in this diagram, you're kind of seeing how food retail, food service, and households, how all of that food waste gets managed. And you can see 60% of that management goes straight to landfills. So it's a pretty significant degree of waste. So what I wanted to do is see if I can apply what my knowledge in microbiology and biology, along with campus resources, to try to combat food waste on a local scale. So I wanted to go to composting. So at Virginia Wesleyan, we have a composting program run by our sustainable organization, Marlins Go Green. And this is a recent composting program that I participate in. And I wanted to see if I could apply some microbiology to our program. Right now, our composting program is restricted to what we can compost. So we're restricted to plants, particularly fruits, vegetables, and then some paper products. And that reason is because composting on a small scale restricts the degree to which we can compost. So we can't really compost fats or oils because they take too long to break down and they can attract pests. So what we do now is we have vermicomposting using worms, and we break this food down over the course of weeks. And I want to see if we can increase both the yield of compost and the speed at which we can break that down. And I chose bacteria specifically because they are very durable, they can survive at higher temperatures than worms or other organisms, and they can break down more food depending on the species. So I did some research. I did some research on lipolytic bacteria. So lipolytic bacteria are bacteria that can break down lipids, which are found in our fats and oils. So there's two studies. One study who found and successfully cultured lipolytic bacteria in industrial fat-containing wastes. And that same group later used tributyrin agar, which I'll use later in my experiment, to selectively cultivate lipolytic bacteria extracted from river sediments. Another study incorporated lipolytic bacteria into restaurant wastewater treatment systems. All of these studies essentially show both that lipolytic bacteria are readily available in the environment and that they've already been applied to waste treatment. So my experimentation, what I wanted to do is see if I could culture and use bacteria sourced from our own college campus to try to see if we can optimize our composting program. So what I did is I went and I gathered samples from around campus. I tried to get a wide variety of soil compositions to try to vary the bacterial biodiversity. And I isolated and plated those bacteria on what's called tributyrin agar plates. So what you're seeing in that top right is a colony grown on a tributyrin agar plate. So tributyrin oil is a very, very simple triglyceride. Triglycerides are what make up our lipids, both in our bodies and in the food that we eat. So it's a very, very basic test to see if bacteria can break down these fats. So I culture these bacteria on these plates. So this outer red circle and this inner red circle, that area between is called the zone of clearing. The zone of clearing, the size of that clearing, indicates the degree to which that bacteria can break down lipids in that food. So lipolytic activity in this agar was measured using zone of clearing. I also duplicated this experiment in broth using this device here, which measures optical density. So in broth tubes, optical density is essentially measuring the degree of growth of bacterial colonies in this broth. So the greater the optical density, the greater light is being absorbed through the broth tube, indicating higher lipolytic activity in that bacteria. I also wanted to see if I could identify the most active species from each soil zone using what's called Burgess' Manual of Determinative Bacteriology. So here are some pictures. This is what the tributyrin agar ended up looking like. These two are from one soil zone, another and another. You can't really see it here but there are some pretty significant zones of clearing around some of the major colonies from each soil zone. And then up above, we have in green is my control broth, which does not have any tributylin oil in it, and then my experimental broth that has tributylin oil. So I wanted to get a comparative analysis of broth and then compare that to the zones of clearing in the auger. So here are the results. Essentially what you're seeing here is a comparison, relative change in growth is the comparison of the experimental to the control broth, and then the zones of clearing up top is from the auger experiment. So I'm comparing the change in growth in the broth with the auger for each species in each soil zone. The colors here for the arrows, the blue is indicating an expected change in growth, the red not expected. Upwards arrows are showing that they increased, downward arrows decreasing, and then the density of the arrow is showing the degree of change. So essentially, there was mostly a replication of the auger trend in the broth. What you're seeing here in soil zone 19, this was the opposite trend. So we saw a drastic increase in growth in the experimental broth, which was not expected. It was expected as a decrease because the zone of clearing was very small. And then we're seeing a drastic decrease, or a slightly drastic decrease in growth in the broth for a species that had a high zone of clearing in the auger. And so these are my identification results. So going back, I identified this species, and this species because they had the highest zones of clearing in their respective soil zones. So my results for that, I identified one species as Lactobacillus delbrueckii, and the other two species were both identified as Corynebacterium xerosis. Lactobacillus delbrueckii is right here, and then these two are both Corynebacterium xerosis. Both of these genuses are known to include lipolytic species, so this is kind of showing that we have these lipolytic species readily available on our campus. So I wanted to address the inconsistencies we saw in that chart with the two species that did not behave as expected. The broth experiment didn't precisely replicate the auger experiment, and I have some ideas as to why. So certain species of bacteria may be more or less effective in different mediums. So while the species that was most lipolytically active in the auger may not be the most lipolytically active in the broth because it doesn't have components necessary to move and bind to substrate in a liquid medium. And it also may be the case that while some species are lipolytic, lipids may not be their ideal nutrient source. So moving them from an auger without a high lipid content to an auger with a high lipid content, they may prefer carbohydrates or proteins or some other substrate that I'm manipulating in my experiment. So replicate experiments in auger and broth would be needed to determine the standard behavior of these species. But in general, this proof of concept experiment was successful. We were able to find bacteria on our campus, so we're not introducing any invasive or non-native bacteria that can be harnessed and readily used using resources we have available on our campus. With further testing, these bacteria could be implemented into the campus composting program, making Wesleyan a better sustainable food waste management model for other academic institutions. Of course, I would like to thank Dr. Williams, who is my microbiome professor and my advisor, for her time and her mentorship during the project. Of course, Drs. Quick and Moskowitz for their guidance in Honors 480. I'd like to thank Marlinsco Green for inspiring this project. I wouldn't have had this idea without that. And I greatly appreciate the support of family and friends throughout the entire process. Thank you.
Thank you, Jalen. Our third finalist this evening is Marco Molino. Marco's a senior who claims to be from both Alexandria, Virginia and Torino, Italy. I'm sure that's possible. As is his hometown. Marco will be graduating with a Bachelor of Sciences in Biology with a focus on ecology and a minor in Earth and Environmental Sciences. Marco's pursued his love of outdoors through a study away course in Alaska and has conducted research around the country and, frankly, around the world. Marco completed his major thesis research on songbird communities in the White Mountain National Forest, and this past summer, Marco accepted a position with the James Madison University's East Africa Research and Learning research course. He has treasured the past 3 years of his experience in the AREC entomology lab, and his love of the outdoors and his care for a sustainable planet has come through in his research. I'd like to present this time Marco Molino.
Alrighty. All right, very exciting. Let's talk about some grass. Hi, folks. Today my presentation will be on redefining the lawn by implementation of eco-lawns on Virginia Wesleyan's campus. Now, I want to ask, think back. I'm sure we've all noticed we don't tend to see fireflies nearly as much as we used to. This is in part directly due to the increasing presence of lawns like these. Fireflies reproduce and develop in fields containing a diversity of plants, and these monocultured lawns simply don't meet that need. In the next 10 minutes or so, I hope to be able to explain how we can get them back. First, though, I want to briefly touch on how the American lawn impacts our environment and how we can remedy this issue. Currently, an area 2 times the size of Georgia is covered by these monocultured lawns across the U.S. Neither the grasses used nor the lawns as a habitat are native to the U.S. Because of this non-nativity, standard lawns require a great deal of resources and care to maintain. And because of their wide presence, they heavily displace native ecosystems. This results in their addition to the U.S.'s contribution to climate change and impacts human health. Ecolawns, then, are a comprehensive solution to this issue. These ecolawns are defined as planted spaces that reduce environmental and financial costs, improve local ecosystem health, and require no additional or reduced maintenance efforts while maintaining lawn-like qualities or function depending on the methodology. And as you can see, they can address the costs of monocultured lawns point by point. Now, why do I recommend ecolawns for VWU specifically? Firstly, ecolawns would help the school meet its goal of environmental awareness and sustainability, partially by appealing to the goals listed in the environmental guiding principles, i.e. responsible stewardship of campus resources and protection and enhancement of the environment and its biodiversity. And more importantly, however, this would distinguish VWU as a spearheading institution for a greater scale of eco-lawn implementation, a distinction few universities both in the US and in Europe have achieved, some of those few being Oxford and Cornell. This would elevate and allow VWU to truly set a precedent in the region. Ecolawns would reduce the cost of land care as well, saving the school's operating funds and reducing pollution production, improve the campus's ecological health, allowing lawns to act as small-scale nature refuges for native or more sensitive species within a heavily urbanized area. And they would increase the educational resources of the school by acting as long-term research material for university students and be added material for appropriate courses. Now, as support for my eco-lawn proposal, I work to increase campus awareness and bolster support. Firstly, I sent out a short survey asking students to share their current opinion and their hopes for the campus's lawn space. As you can see, the response rate alone really demonstrated the student body's interest in the proposal, made more clear by some of the specific recommendations I've listed there. Oh, I apologize. I thought that was going. There we go. Those are some quotes from the survey. The survey showed that there was a desire to engage with the campus's open spaces, but little incentive due to their current composition. Suffice to say, this response really helped spur my efforts in making the goals of a more diverse planted campus a reality. There we go. Got it now. I also presented my work in front of key stakeholders on campus and students most likely to be knowledgeable on the subject and interested in participating, both of which helped to sharpen and improve my action plan as a whole. And I established contacts with experts in horticulture, eco-lawns, and alternative lawn management, which will act as resources and references for the implementation of my action plan in the future. Now, what's this action plan I keep talking about? To begin the shift on VWU's campus, I created a comprehensive action plan / proposal explaining what steps the school can take to successfully create a majority eco-lawn-based campus. The action plan hinges on the guided application of the 7 proposed eco-lawn methodologies I've listed here. Each methodology seeks to improve the visual and aesthetic interests of the school by magnitudes and improve its sustainability in unique ways. Additionally, I have provided specific cost-saving metrics for each eco-lawn to help direct application and ensure the university is easily informed of its fiscal and carbon savings. Lastly, I want to note that the action plan details all possible changes, but is intended to be used as a pick and choose based on the needs and preferences of the university. With the framework established, I wanted to provide some examples of what eco-lawns I recommend for VWU. Pictorial lawns, for instance, are a very low maintenance methodology that can be applied to filler lawns, increasing visual interest and encouraging pollinator visits while maintaining high traffic tolerance. In recommended plants, I list a mix specifically formulated to encourage bee pollinators. As an eco-lawn that requires reduced mowing methodology, a complete application of this method within the recommended area would lead to 625 pounds of carbon saved and $2,469 saved per year. Next, the arguable star of eco-lawns, the urban meadow, most accurately replicates natural ecosystem complexity. These would be applied to large, low-traffic areas on campus. Urban meadows are highly dynamic and shift plant composition and in respect color within the year and over their lifetime, and would support sensitive local species. And as you can see in the blue section, the eco-lawns that require no mechanical mowing at all increase the monetary and CO2 savings to an even greater degree. Now, crucial to the action plan are the maps denoting and defining VWU's lawns. Yes, this took me quite a while to make. I created this map to detail the current use and traffic level each portion of lawn experiences to establish a baseline and reference. This informs appropriate distribution of each methodology and could act as a general resource for future related work. This also works in tandem with a detailed description of the current groundskeeping methodologies used on campus. Now, looking a little more closely, I wanted to point out these hatched portions I've got detailed on the map. I've designated these spaces as test patches for particular eco-lawns. These patches will allow us to apply the methodologies quickly, thanks to their small scale, and assess how they develop, informing future application and giving us space to make edits where necessary. These test patches recommend applying a reduced mowing methodology, specifically no-mow May, in the 2 red patches I've described here, as well as a non-mowing methodology, as I previously mentioned, urban meadows, in the blue hatched portion, to gauge the impact and development at both ends of the eco-lawn spectrum, which details the degree to which you are shifting the current lawn to an eco-lawn application. This map then, which displays the comprehensive application of the eco-lawns, will act as the main directing force in the implementation of the action plan. The map shows the placement of each eco-lawn based on where its benefits will be most effective, considering their particular environmental and traffic requirements. Zooming in, I want to focus on some of the most promising suggestions I've listed. In front of the Defford Manor, there is a large plot of rarely used open lawn. This action plan recommends that this is an ideal location for the application of urban meadows. It also suggests that a walking path within the meadows and signage be applied to improve impact for both the student body and visitors. You can also see along the fountain ponds, detailed by blue with pink diamonds on top, pond rim gardens could be cultivated to improve visual interest and water quality. Next, the quad, a major component of the school's campus, is suggested to implement reduced mowing methodologies to a majority of the quad, encouraging naturally occurring flowering plants, which can still take a high traffic yield. And along the sloped rim here, where I detail in gray slashes, I recommend applying border lawns, herbaceous flowering plants of varying height, to maximize the use of the quad and increase aesthetics. To the west, you can also see that there is an ideal location for rain gardens next to Blocker, and a slow-growing lawn along Blocker's western edge. Lastly, I wanted to take time to draw our attention to Honors Village and point out the ideal opportunity for the implementation of rain gardens along the parking lot dividers to make use of their excellent capacity for pollution filtration and really demonstrate a connected message to the native gardens adjacent to Greer. To close out, I just want to reiterate, don't overlook grass lawns. They're everywhere, but they impact our lives and the planet in big ways. I hope this project has found dedicated minds and inspired students to pick up where I left off. And I want to make it clear I will always be available as a resource for those that do choose to pick it up and apply it in their own way. Students and staff have made their opinion clear, and I hope this will act as a further incentive to move this project off the paper and into the field. VWU really has a chance to do something great and start this shift, using these actions to send a powerful message and become a trailblazer in eco-lawn application. Lastly, grass lawns could be so much more than what they are. They could be the space fireflies need to make their grand comeback. Thank you.
These three finalists really exemplify the diversity of the goals of sustainability in a wide variety spectrum and the magnitude of ideas and solutions needed at both the local, national, and a global level for a more sustainable and healthy planet. Our three finalists tonight are already winners. They will all receive a cash prize. And then we will also donate the same sum in their name to a nonprofit organization of their choosing. They have done tonight. So tonight, as I'm about to announce the awards for the Ryan Prize and the finalists, our three finalists, we'll start with honoring the two honorable mentions from our finalist panel. And our first honorable mention tonight, receiving a $125 cash prize. Try and get these in the right order. A $125 cash prize in their name, and then a $125 cash donation in honor of the Center for Biological Diversity at the World Resources Institute is Jalen Major. I wish there was a less dramatic way to make this happen, but our second honorable mention tonight for their work will also receive a $125 cash prize and a $125 donation in honor of their chosen nonprofit, which is the Caroline for Kibera Foundation, the nonprofit and NGO seeking to empower youth in Kenya, and that honorable mention goes to Marco Molino. Congratulations, Marco. And our Ryan Prize winner this evening is Brianne Bissett. And her prize, the Ryan Prize, goes with a cash prize of $750 and a donation of $750 to Bree's nonprofit of choice, the LGBTQ Life Center in Norfolk. So.
Let's put Louis on one side and Jane on the other. And you come up with that. So you bring this there. Here we go. Here we go.
As we start to close out the evening a little bit, I'd like to thank Dr. Jill Sturtz, the Assistant Dean for the Baton Honors College, Ashley Lockard, Shelley Hunter, Heather Beatty, Keza Dayton, Ava Gerstemeyer, and Lucas Gordon for their assistance in making this evening great, as well as helping us throughout this entire process over the course of the semester. I'd also like to take a moment and recognize our Baton professors here this evening. Do you mind standing, and we may honor you for your service to the Baton Honors College. Turn it back over to Dr. Miller. All right.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Congratulations to our winner, our finalists, and all of our student
I'm going
participants.
to sneak in for just a moment.
Okay.
We do have an audience. We do have an audience prize that everyone has voted on this evening. The audience award. I should have written that in my script, and I did not. Always give an actor a script. This prize goes to the poster chosen by you this evening. Now, because it was chosen this evening, this person will receive a forthcoming check for $100, as well as a certificate, and we'll present that to the winner at the capstone ceremony. But we'll want to recognize the winner this evening, so everyone won't ask me 30 questions later who won. The winner of tonight's Audience Choice Award is poster number 13, which is authored by Harrison Smith. Congratulations, Harry. We'll take a quick picture here for the three of us. Yeah. And then you'll get your check again.
Okay, next.
Terrific. Thank you guys.
Thank you so much.
Thanks again. To Jane and Louie, we extend our deepest and most sincere thanks. Your unwavering belief in our students, in who they are and who they have the potential to become, means more than words can express. Because of your extraordinary support, they're not only growing into global thinkers, but emerging as bold, creative problem solvers ready to take on the world's greatest challenges. So again, we thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming, and have a good night. We appreciate you being a part of this very special program. Thanks again.